Hi and welcome back to another Ask GMBN Tech. This is a Q&A session. Get your questions in the comments underneath. Use that hashtag Ask GMBN Tech and we'll pick them up if they're a good enough question for the show. Okay, first up this week is from Muddy Meyer. Hi Muddy Meyer. Can you advise on super budget bike maintenance products and tools for a complete beginner? Stuff that I might even have already lying about the house. Okay, well, absolute basic, you need a set of Allen keys, a basic multi-tool, something like one of this. Has got the major contenders on it, everything from like a 1.5mm Allen key up to a 6mm. You might want an 8mm as well, but pretty much something like that will do you really well. You're going to need a pump for your bike, you'll need a puncture repair kit, tyre levers, some chain lube. You could get a generic one, you could get wet or dry depending on the conditions you ride in. That's pretty much it for basic jobs. Okay, for stuff around the house, right, so to clean your bike, if you're not using dedicated stuff, you can use washing up liquid. Despite all those people out there saying, oh, it's got salt content in it, most bike cleaners have salt content in it. Right, that's not a problem. Just make sure you wash it off properly afterwards. I would not get it near your disc rotors, to be honest, but you could still use it fine on your bike. What else? Kitchen roll makes a good alternative for a shop towel. Old toothbrush. Perfect for cleaning your chain, your cassette, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, don't keep it near your bathroom just in case for afterwards. Water displacer. So when you're washing a bike, you want to flush out the water afterwards from moving mechanical parts like your chain in particular, because otherwise you can get surface rust and things in there. So most houses will have a can of water displacer, probably WD-40, something like that, under the kitchen sink maybe. If you've got some of that, you can use that, but don't treat it as a substitute for oil because it's not. It does have an oil in it, but it's like a solvent water displacer essentially, but still good stuff for using on bikes. No issues with using that at all on my bikes. Trying to think what else. There's got to be loads of things. I can't think off the top of my head. I'm just looking around for examples of things that I might use. Oh, this is a good one actually. I made some hand cleaner from sugar, basically granulated sugar, olive oil and honey. I think that's what's in there. Yeah, that's all that's in there, basically, because the sugar is rough enough and coarse enough to really get into your hands. The olive oil in there is really nice, and the honey, basically, in fact, it's just olive oil. What am I talking about? So honey in there. Let me check the smell. Yeah, that's right. But it works great, and I need to make another batch, actually. It's really good stuff if you want to waste stuff you've got lying around the house. Right, next question is from SMLRTO. Please give me some advice. I want to build an Enduro hardtail. Do I do 650B plus or 29 or even mullet? I want it to be fast and playful and downhill, but still okay going uphill. Greetings from Black Forest. Well, greetings back to you. Okay, well, a 29er outright is going to feel fastest and it's going to be best on bumps because a 29er plus isn't as big as 29 despite what people think. You'd have to run a 3-inch tyre for it to have the same sort of outside diameter as a 29-inch with, what, 2.3, 2.4-inch tyre, roughly, give or take. But you could do a mullet like that. You could have a 27.5 plus, like a true plus on the rear and a 29 on the front. That wouldn't be too bad, the unevenness, because the big size of the tyre would be kind of beneficial on the back. What you wouldn't want to do, I think, is have a mullet set up with just a regular size 27.5 on the back, because you're just going to get kicked up the arse the whole time. It's just not going to be beneficial. You're better off having 27.5 front and rear if you're going to do that case, because I think the bigger front wheel is going to lead you into like a full sense of security when you're riding rough stuff. You might end up with more buckled wheels and things like that, which you want to avoid. But a plus on the rear could be a good goer. Is anyone else out there running a mullet style setup on their hardtails? Let us know in the comments. But if I was you, I would go for 29, but only if you have enough room that you're not going to buzz yourself when you're manoeuvring around on the bike. You need to move quite a lot on the hardtail to really compensate for the lack of suspension, so do take that into account. If you're on the taller side, 29 is the way to go. If you're on the shorter side, go for the 27.5 plus, which I guess these days is more like 2.5, 2.6 tyres. So yeah, sounds like a good option. Next question is from Graham. Doddy, Garmin 530 or 830, are they good for navigating trails you don't know? Looking to do some cycling holidays and not sure if they're effective at navigation on trails to save looking at OS maps all the time. Well, I've got I've got the 830, and yes, they are very good for that. I mean, admittedly, I don't use them for that, but they're compatible. You can use these with Komoot and I think trail forks and various other bits of software where it can read directly from there, so you can have a look directly on your device, and it will give you on-screen navigation tips. Now, it's not quite as accurate as like turn left on Smithfield Avenue in 100 meters. It's kind of like take the left fork and you kind of got to use your nose a bit, but you can see the map and you can see where the trail goes, and it all kind of makes sense when you're riding off-road anyway. So I definitely look into it. There's a number of videos online that Garmin have. It's really quite cool, and actually I feel kind of bad that because I ride locally most of the time, especially in the last year, we haven't been able to ride anywhere else. I know all my local trails, so I've not been using anything to do with navigation, but that's actually made me want to really try that out. I think there's probably an interesting feature in using tech out on the trails, as in like digital GPS, like sort of style tech. If that's of interest, let us know in the comments, and if it is, let us know of any other products you might think you would want to see in a video. You know, it could be stuff like drones for filming stuff. It could be any other GPS type of devices, heart rate monitors, anything. We've not really approached that, so I think there's mileage there for a pretty cool video. Like I said, let us know in the comments under there about any sort of digital GPS style tech that you'd like us to have a look at and do something with. Next one's from Psychology. I've seen a few people installing forks with a tapered steer tube into straight head tubes using the external bottom cup. What effect does this have on geometry? Assuming this will affect head and BB height to some degree. Unintentional pun. Okay, so a headset cup like that is going to be somewhere in the region of around 10mm longer. So typically, if you raise your front end up 10mm, you lose about a degree off your head angle. And of course, your bottom bracket will raise. How much it raises depends on how long your bike is, obviously. If your bike's really short, it's going to raise quite a lot. If it's really long, it's not going to raise that much at all. Your seat angle is obviously going to slacken very slightly. And unless your bike has a really slack seat angle, this is fine, because you can literally just tilt your nose of your seat down slightly and perhaps move it forwards just a tiny bit to compensate. Now, I've actually done this in the past on a Trek Remedy that I used to have. Hopefully there's a picture of it on screen, and this might even be a shot of it from Moab where I took the bike. That bike was one of my favourites at the time, super lightweight, 26-inch carbon. Had that, in fact, I had 2 generations of that bike, absolutely loved them. And riding my favourite place on earth to ride a bike at Moab. I wanted to rake out the front end on that, so I did exactly that. But Trek were very careful to say to me, if you put a longer fork in the front, it does invalidate warranty. And I didn't want to sort of make any confusions with the viewers and readers and stuff in the magazine I was working for at the time. So I shortened the fork from 150 down to 140, and then fitted the Cane Creek angle set, which needed an external cup for it to work. And I slackened it by 1.5 degrees actually, so it's proper raked out on that bike. Although it doesn't look like it in these images, but it was a really good setup on there, and it was fine. I didn't have an issue losing 10mm off the travel to gain the performance handling. But depending on what frame you have, you might want to just do that anyway and keep that 10mm. 10mm isn't much, but do take care if your manufacturer of your frame says about invalidation of the warranty, because you're on your own if you do get a mistake, and chances are it will never have any issue to your bike. But if something else goes wrong with your bike and it's found out that you're doing something like that, then they could technically just be an arse about it and say, well, no, it does say in the warranty that you can't do this. So yeah, play to that strength if I was you, but yeah, you can do it and it works fine, and you'll basically lose a degree of the head angle, which can be to your benefit. Hannon247. Are you able to fix a stretch chain, or do you need to buy a new one? Well, okay, first up, chains don't technically stretch. So this is a common myth, right, that your chain stretches. They do get longer, but they don't actually stretch. It's a metal chain, you can't stretch one. But what happens is, hopefully there's some shots of a chain on screen. In fact, I'm gonna get a shot of a chain on my screen now. Okay, so I've got some images of a chain here on the laptop. Right, so as you can see here, so this is your main chain link. This is known as the outer plate. You've got the pins that go through it, and then you've got the inner plate. So I'm just gonna show you a different view. This one here from the top. So that is the outer plate, yeah, on both sides. Then you have these inner plates, and then you have the rollers. So those rollers rotate basically around like a chamfered edge on the inside plate. And what happens is those rollers are designed to sit completely flush on. So imagine that is the trough on a sprocket, and that is your roller of the chain. It's designed to sit inside here. But what happens is, just through use, the chain roller is basically getting bigger on the inside because it's a softer material than the rest of the chain. And it basically enables those plates then, instead of lining up like this, to just kind of move very slightly. And we're talking like a minute amount, but this through the length of the chain means the chain effectively grows. Now, the effect of a chain growing is really bad because it wears out the sprockets on the front of your bike and the rear, so your chain rings and your rear cassette. And it does this by the roller not lining up correctly on the cassette. Okay, so just to emphasize the point, here it is again so you can see it. You've got the outer plate, you've got the inner plates, you've got the pins, and then you've got the rollers. Now, those rollers will sit completely flush, speaking English here, on the sort of the trough between the teeth on a sprocket. Now, what happens is as the chain wears, because the pitch effectively changes of the chain, it gets each link gets slightly longer. This the roller actually starts wearing on either side, depending on where it is on the cassette. And the effect of that is each of the teeth on those sprockets starts wearing into like a little shark fin. Now, if you ask your mechanic in your nearest bike shop to see an old knackered cassette, they'll show you one, and all those teeth can be literally like spikes. And that is because the owner has ridden that with a worn out chain. So the general rule of thumb is change your chain before it's worn out, get yourself a chain wear guide. And if you can do that, you'll probably get 2 chains, maybe even 3 to 1 cassette. Whereas the general rule of thumb is to replace a chain and a cassette both together. But I'm telling you, you can get a lot more use out of it if you're willing to change your chain first. So there you go. So your chain doesn't technically grow, but it does get longer. Hopefully that makes sense. Obviously it makes sense to me. Okay, next one. Why in general are enduro and downhill racers so slow and reluctant to adopt new technology, even when they're a clear development? It's a marked departure from the rest of cycling. For example, take the Pink Bike Grim Donut series where they showed how much faster it is. Basically, the Pink Bike made this crazy long geometry bike and it was faster, basically. But only certain things, so it's only faster when it's faster terrain. Is there any other type of cycling the races would demand the option to use bikes like that right away? Why is mountain biking different? That's an interesting question. I guess to a degree, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's been loads of people in the past that have brought out things that are like remarkably quicker or better for whatever reason, and people have just refused or just laughed at them, basically. Good example of that was when Mondraker brought the forward geometry system out with the 10mm stem and the 60mm on the front end of a bike. Everyone laughed, like, look at those things, they're disgusting. And then they realised how well they rode. But the problem is the bike industry didn't have the balls to commit to it. Mondraker went straight in, like literally straight in, no kissing. Yeah, we're going straight to where you need to be. And if you look at modern geometry on all good bikes these days, you'll find that they're basically in the same realm as where Mondraker were in 2014, which is mental if you think about it. So they're a great example of a brand doing exactly that. Another good example of that actually is skin suits in downhill. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're racing against a clock, yeah? So why not wear a bloody skin suit? It makes no sense to me. When you're doing a race, you're down the side of a hill with a clock on your head, and it does make a difference. Now, Chris Porter, who runs Mojo Rising, he used to run a downhill team called Mojo back in the day, and they used those like skin suits used for skiing. And I forget, I don't want to misquote it, but it's either 4 or 8 seconds the time that every rider averaged quicker wearing one of those than wearing their regular baggies. That's free time. Why would you not do it? And it's, you know, a sport of marginal gains. Now, you might have noticed that, so there was a skin suit ban however long back in downhill, I forget because it annoyed me so much. But racers since then, including some of the ones that moaned about the ban, that instigated the ban, have actually started wearing clothing that's getting thinner and thinner and clipped in because they noticed the difference of running stuff that fits properly, that's not baggy and flapping around in the wind and costing you time. I don't know, to be honest. I have no idea why mountain biking is different. Some areas, it makes common sense. Cross country, you're always going to wear Lycra. It makes sense for what you're doing. It doesn't get in the way, it doesn't hamper your riding, it's actually incredibly comfy for the purpose. And some people are like, Lycra, it's just like, oh, get over it. Like, it's the right tool for the job, it works. So I'm completely with you, and I don't know why people are so reluctant to adopt stuff. Perhaps it's because mountain biking it's not really that authentic. Mountain biking borrows from so many other sports, so maybe it's because it's taking so much from other sports, people perceive it to, shouldn't have to change, or it's uncool to do these different things. And I'm looking at an e-bike right now, and that's a prime example. Look how mountain bikers have felt about e-bikes and 29-inch wheels, and oh yeah, everyone's on 29-inch wheels now. It's like, when something new comes out, people shouldn't fight it. You should see what the argument for it is. It's not just marketing. Okay, marketing brands are going to jump on that because it's a prime opportunity to try and sell more product. Yeah, but it's not the reason the product existed in the first place. The product existed because a bike designer of some kind was like, holy crap, like I need to make this because it's going to be the best. So yeah, I'm with you there. It's a bit weird, isn't it? If anyone else got any theory on that, let us know in those comments. Next up is from Enib. Is that chainstay protector model specific, universal or custom? Okay, so you're talking about this picture on screen that was in my Instagram post. It is actually, I've got one here, one of these. It's a velocity hucking system. So this is made from my favorite thing. It's made from 3M rubber mastic tape, which I've got a roll of that as well, but I can't bother to show you. If you want to buy that mastic tape and make your own stuff, it's Scotch 3M 2228, I think it is. They do it 25 and 50mm widths, but it's kind of hard to get hold of. But this stuff is also 3M and it's custom. It's really cool. It's got these little air pockets, and it basically, when you trim it down to fit on the chainstay of your bike, like in the picture we just showed you, it looks like it's supposed to be there, and it genuinely works. Great stuff. Look them up. It's a company from New Zealand. You can get them distributed in the UK, and I think they ship worldwide anyway. Really cool packaging. Looks like an old VHS cassette, if anyone's old enough to remember those. But super cool. Yeah, it's very good stuff. Last question then, Josh Porter. I've literally replaced my brake pads on my old bike less than 3 months ago and haven't ridden on that bike due to an upgrade, and now they don't work at all. Seems wasteful to chuck away fresh pads. Any tips to stop the squeal? Like proper ear piercing, hear it a mile off. Okay, well it sounds like they were never bedded in properly in the first place. Now this isn't to suggest that you're doing things wrong, but sometimes pads don't get bedded in properly and that does affect things. So the name of the game here is to deposit material from your brake pads onto those disc rotors evenly. Yeah, when you do that evenly, it gives them basically a surface and they mate together really well. If it's erratic and it's kind of like in blobs around there, like you won't see it, but you'll feel the sort of the turkey gobble effect. Some of you will notice, you'll both be like, and then basically the brake pads start oscillating and that turns into a squeal. So that's what you're getting, and they won't ever bite properly. So what you want to do is remove them from your bike. Clean the disc rotors down completely. Boiling water is a good thing to use. Obviously use a pair of gloves. You can use like disc brake cleaner and stuff, but you basically want to make sure they've got nothing, like rotors have nothing on them. Don't have your bare hands on them, because even your hands have oil in the skin. So once they're clean and stuff, get a hardcore emery paper, like an 80 grit, something like that, and just roughen them up lightly, only a little bit on both sides of the braking track. Get it back on your bike and basically do the same with the brake pads. Now, if your brake pads were contaminated, then you're flogging a dead horse here. You can get a bit more use out of them, but if they were just not bedded in properly, this will help. So clean them up, make sure they're completely dry before going to the next step. Once they're dry, you've got two options here. So the first one is to roughen them up and then put them on the bike and then start the bedding in process. The other option is to get them wet and rub the two pads together. Okay, and that will take off the top surface. Rinse that off, let them dry, put them back on the bike. For bedding your brakes in, roll down a sort of a medium gradient hill and basically pull your brakes like probably 2/3 power, yeah, and let the bike slow down and then release the brakes, carry on. Do this several times, 2/3 power. Don't drag and don't like lock all the way, because it won't do the job. You're trying to deposit that material evenly, and you'll find by the time you get to the bottom of that hill, they'll start grabbing a little bit. Now do the same hill again with more power and a bit more speed, and then by the time you get to the bottom, hopefully they should be fine. Now some brakes are more susceptible to being noisy, like sintered pads can be a bit more noisy, especially if it's cold, if it's damp and they're a bit wet and they haven't got up to heat yet, but that generally works. So good luck with that. Any questions on brakes or anything else that we've been talking about in this video, let us know in those comments underneath there, and we'll catch you on the next show. See you later.